Today, pro-abortion Democrats voted to allow the infanticide or murder of newborn babies. Babies that have been born alive after a failed abortion to be murdered, to deny them the right to life. How dare you?
Controversial legislation to ease restrictions on late-term abortions is at the center of a fierce nationwide debate. New York passing a sweeping law allowing abortions up until a baby's due date. Democrat lawmakers in Virginia under fire for comments surrounding a similar bill pushing post-birth abortion or infanticide. Lawmakers in Vermont and Rhode Island also pushing radical bills. While the legal lines between abortion rights and restrictions continue to blur, I am joined by 3 abortion survivors who are here to share their personal stories. Melissa Oden. Melissa is the founder of Abortion Survivors Network. Josiah Presley and Claire Colwell are also here. Thank you so much for joining us. Your personal stories completely captivated me. I want to just go down the line. I want to talk to you guys and have you share just briefly your personal story as being survivors of abortion. And we'll start with you, Melissa.
I survived a failed saline infusion abortion in 1977. And most people know it really took me most of my life to piece together the story of my life. But what I know is that my birth mother was 19 years old. She was a college student, unmarried, and it was her family who was responsible for forcing the abortion upon her. I should have been poisoned and scalded to death in the womb. My procedure actually lasted 5 days. And on the 5th day of the abortion procedure, I was delivered, believing that I would be a successful abortion. And lo and behold, I was born alive.
Wow. Wow. Josiah?
Yeah, so I'm actually adopted into a family of 12 kids. And when I was 13 years old, my adopted parents, they told me about how my birth mother, 2 months into her pregnancy with me, actually underwent a curettage abortion. They thought the procedure had been successful, but a few months later, they realized that it actually failed. And so I was born later on October 7th, 1995, and I was placed with the foster home ministry in South Korea, where I was born, and lived there for about 13 months before I was adopted and brought over to the States, where I live with my family now.
Wow. These are miracle stories. Yes, Claire?
My birth mother, I'm adopted as well, and my birth mother was 13 years old when she was pregnant with me, and her mother took her to an abortion clinic where she had a late-term D&C surgical abortion, and they told her that her life would go back to normal, but 6 weeks later she realized that things were not going back to normal, and so she went back to that doctor and found out that her abortion had been successful, but that she had been pregnant with twins and one had survived.
And that's you.
That was me,
and
I was born 6 weeks later, and my hips were completely dislocated, my feet were turned in as club feet, and I was in the hospital for 2 months and had body casts for the first 2 years of my life because of that abortion. But I'm grateful to be here today.
These are such amazing stories. I know people at home listening, it probably inspires quite a bit of faith in some. It's a miracle to many. But when you hear, Melissa, when you hear these conversations about abortion now taking a turn where we're not just talking about abortions that happen early on in pregnancy, you have politicians now fighting for abortions very late term. They're talking about potential no rights for these babies even after they're born, complete dehumanization of the process. How does it feel for you, having survived an abortion, to listen to this language and feel like these babies have no rights?
That's why we're here today, right? Because we need to have a conversation about the fact that we exist. These are human beings whose lives are being affected. And I think it's important we recognize the more Democrats introduce this kind of legislation through the third trimester, the greater the likelihood is going to be that children like us survive abortions. Our lives should not be left in the hands of our abortionists or the luck of the draw of who's working that day. You know, we fight for our lives in the womb. We shouldn't have to fight for our lives yet again after we're born alive.
Josiah, you know, Governor Northam in Virginia, who's embroiled in a bit of scandal, a lot of that scandal started when he started speaking about late-term abortions in an interview. I have a soundbite of that I want to play for you and just get your reaction. Let's take a listen.
if a mother is in labor, I can tell you exactly what would happen. The infant would be delivered. The infant would be kept comfortable. The infant would be resuscitated if that's what the mother and the family desired. And then a discussion would ensue between the physicians and the mothers.
He's saying the infant would be resuscitated if that's what they desired, and then a discussion would ensue. Many are considering this a conversation about the murder of a now-born child. What is your guttural reaction to that?
I mean, honestly, it's shocking, but it's also not surprising just living in a country where abortion, it's legal in the first parts of a person's development. I mean, when we have arbitrary definitions of personhood, this is where it leads, right? Mm-hmm. We end up with conversations of right after a child's born, are we considering them valuable or not? Mm-hmm. And that causes us to say we need to open up the discussion again to recognize that we need to have objective criteria for personhood, and that would, for us, we believe, begin at conception.
Yep. Claire, we have 2 minutes. Just any last-minute words for people about maybe a message to Democratic lawmakers who are fighting for these things?
We just want people to know that we do exist. We do have names. We do have stories. We are human. We weren't any less human in our mother's wombs, and so we want people to be able to put a face with what they're voting on, what they're deciding on, and what laws are being put forth.
Well, I want to thank you guys so much. I know this has been such an incredible experience just to listen to what you've had to say on this, and just amazing. And we have a toss? Oh, no, we don't. Yep, we do. Still ahead, Tammy Roos, Mike Huckabee, and Anthony Scaramucci all join. Well, New York and Virginia, just two of the states drawing outrage over late-term abortion laws. Earlier, a panel of abortion survivors joined us with their powerful message.
We need to have a conversation about the fact that we exist. These are human beings whose lives are being affected. And I think it's important we recognize the more Democrats introduce this kind of legislation through the third trimester, the greater the likelihood is going to be that children like us survive abortions. Our lives should not be left in the hands of our abortionists or the luck of the draw of who's working that day. We fight for our lives in the womb. We shouldn't have to fight for our lives yet again after we're born alive.
Well, that was a really powerful interview by Jed. And here to react live is Fox News contributor, former governor of Arkansas, of course, Mike Huckabee. Good morning, Governor.
Morning.
Good morning.
These are voices we usually do not hear from.
One of the things that's just so powerful when I hear these stories is how anyone, and I mean anyone, even the most pro-abortion Democrat in the world, could hear those stories and say, yeah, it's perfectly okay to take the life of an unborn child in the womb. Children who have a heartbeat, they've got brain waves, they can taste, they can feel, they have pain thresholds. It's just remarkable to me that anybody would think that's okay to end that human life. It makes no sense to me biologically, theologically, or governmentally. I mean, I'd like to think that we're a more sophisticated nation and more civilized than that.
Governor, the pro-abortion lobby has a grip on Democrats. It seems to be litmus test number one. Why is this issue for them something they throw down on more than anything else?
A lot of it has to do with the extraordinary amount of money that organizations like Planned Parenthood and many of the rich pro-abortionists give to Democrats, and this is tragic. There used to be quite a few pro-life Democrats, and this was not, in the old days, the divisive issue between parties, and there were, quite frankly, a lot of pro-abortion Republicans. I'm kind of happy that there aren't many of those around anymore, because I don't see this as a horizontal issue, left or right, liberal or conservative, Democrat or Republican. I see it as a vertical issue. This isn't up or down, life or death. You either believe in human life or you don't. You believe that every life has value and intrinsic worth, or you think that some people are disposable and that we can get rid of them without consequence. That's how this entire issue ought to be viewed.
Governor, we have another clip of these abortion survivors sharing their amazing stories earlier. I want to take a listen and get your reaction.
When we have arbitrary definitions of personhood, this is where it leads, right? Mm-hmm. We end up with conversations of right after a child's born, are we considering them valuable or not?
We just want people to know that we do exist, we do have names, we do have stories, we are human, we weren't any less human in our mother's wombs, and so we want people to be able to put a face with what they're voting on, what they're deciding on, and what laws are being put forth.
See, Governor, I think the left takes the humanity out of these stories. They talk about it like it's some detached, removed, clump of cells. And when you interview people like this who are abortion survivors and they share their heartfelt stories, that is the only way to have an honest conversation about what's happening and to bring the humanity back into the equation.
Well, it's hard to listen to those firsthand stories of people who have actually survived an abortion and somehow say, no, those people aren't real. Their lives don't matter that much. And maybe it would have been better for the world had the doctor done his job better. Actually, the doctor, thank goodness, was not successful, because these are beautiful human beings, and I think the world is better for them. I can't imagine anybody looking at those people who you just interviewed and thinking somehow we'd sure be better off if they'd been killed in the womb and their bodies dismembered before they ever showed up.
Well, powerful stuff. Great interview, Jed. And Governor, thanks for joining us. I recognize that backdrop. Enjoy Jerusalem. We appreciate you being here.
Absolutely.
You bet.
Thanks,
Thank
Governor.
you.